There's a moment, documented by every Arctic survival expert who has lived through it, where a polar bear locks eyes with you across the ice and does not look away. It does not look afraid. It does not look curious. It looks at you the way nothing else on Earth looks at a human being. Like you are food. Like you have always been food. Like the only question is how long it will take to close the distance. That moment is the truth about polar bears. Everything else, the photographs, the nature films, the footage of cubs playing in snow, is the story we tell to make the truth more comfortable. The truth is that polar bears are the only large land predator on Earth that actively hunts human beings as prey, not as a threat response, not when cornered, not when protecting young, as prey, as a food source, as something it searched for, tracked, and decided to eat. This is what polar bears are, and why the Arctic is the most quietly lethal landscape on the planet for the people who live and work there. Start with the body, because nothing about the polar bear's physical reality is adequately conveyed by photographs. An adult male polar bear weighs between 770 and 1,500 pounds. The largest individuals on record have exceeded 2,200 pounds. Standing on its hind legs, a large male reaches heights of 10 feet or more. The paws are enormous, up to 12 inches across, functioning as paddles in water and snowshoes on ice, distributing weight across soft surfaces with an efficiency that allows the animal to move silently across terrain that would announce a human's presence with every step. The claws are not the hooked, climbing claws of a black bear or grizzly. They are shorter, sharper, and more curved inward, optimized for gripping prey on slippery ice surfaces. When a polar bear strikes a seal, it does so with a single blow from a forepaw that delivers force sufficient to crush the skull of an animal through several inches of ice. The same paw, striking a human, produces results that trauma surgeons in Arctic medical facilities describe in clinical language that does not fully capture what it means in practice. The neck is the other piece of the anatomy that matters. Polar bears carry prey. They lift a 400-pound bearded seal out of a waterhole with their jaws and carry it across the ice without apparent effort. The muscle structure of the neck and shoulders is built around exactly this function. The bite force of a polar bear exceeds 1,200 pounds per square inch. To provide a reference point, the bite force of a lion is approximately 650 pounds per square inch. A polar bear bites with nearly twice the force of a lion and carries that force in a skull designed to break through the ice to reach prey underneath it. Now understand where this animal lives. The Arctic is not a hostile environment for a polar bear. It is home. It is the environment that every physical adaptation this animal possesses was built for over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. The same environment is comprehensively hostile to human beings without technological support. In the high Arctic in winter, ambient temperatures routinely reach minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind chill can push the effective temperature to minus 70 or colder. At those temperatures, exposed skin freezes in minutes. Equipment fails. Navigation becomes nearly impossible in whiteout conditions. The landscape provides no shelter, no landmarks, no escape routes that a human can use effectively. A polar bear in that environment is perfectly comfortable. You are not, and the bear knows the difference. Polar bears have a sense of smell that researchers estimate can detect prey at distances it reaches you. In open terrain on Arctic ice, that window can be measured in seconds. The predatory classification is the piece that separates polar bears from every other large bear species and from virtually every other dangerous animal on Earth. Brown bears and black bears are opportunistic omnivores. They eat berries, roots, fish, and occasionally large mammals. The attacks are frightening and often lethal, but they arise from threat responses rather than predatory intent. Polar bears are hyper-carnivores. Their diet in the wild is almost exclusively composed of ringed seals, bearded seals, and other marine mammals. They do not have a berry-gathering mode. They do not have a root-digging behavior. Every hunting instinct they possess is calibrated to detect, stalk, and kill large marine mammals. And a human being, in terms of size, shape, and availability on the ice, fits within the category of large mammal that a polar bear's hunting programming recognizes as prey. Documented polar bear predatory attacks on humans show a consistent pattern that is categorically different from brown bear attacks. The approach is typically silent and from downwind. The bear has often been watching or following before the person is aware of its presence. The attack begins without vocalization, without a bluff charge, without the warning behaviors associated with defensive aggression in other bear species. It simply closes the distance and attacks. Researchers who analyze these incidents describe them using the same behavioral framework they would apply to a polar bear hunting a seal, because that is what the behavior is. The communities that live with this reality every day are found across the Arctic, in communities in northern Canada, Alaska, Norway's Svalbard archipelago, Greenland, and Russia. For these communities, they are a consistent, managed operational risk that shapes daily life in ways that people further south find difficult to fully conceptualize. In Churchill, Manitoba, one of the most heavily polar bear trafficked locations on Earth, due to its position on the western, Hudson Bay Coast, residents follow protocols that have been refined over generations of living alongside animals that view the town as part of their range. Halloween trick-or-treating routes are planned around known bear movement areas. Children are escorted, vehicles are checked. The Polar Bear Alert System operates like a municipal emergency service with a dedicated hotline, a response team, and holding facilities where problem bears are kept before relocation attempts. This is not exceptional crisis management. This is Tuesday in Churchill. This is the baseline operational reality of a community that has adapted to coexisting with a predator that does not distinguish between the tundra and the edge of town. In Svalbard, the Norwegian archipelago where polar bear density is among the highest on Earth relative to the human population, regulations require that anyone leaving the main settlement of Longyearbyen carry a firearm for bear protection. This is not a recommendation. It is a legal requirement. The Norwegian government has assessed the risk level precisely and determined that the appropriate response is to require every person operating in open terrain to carry the means to stop a predatory attack. Svalbard has recorded multiple fatal polar bear attacks over the decades of modern documentation. The incidents follow the predatory pattern with disturbing consistency. A 2011 attack on a group of British students camping on the archipelago killed one person and seriously injured 4 others before the bear was shot. The bear had entered the camp at night, silently, and attacked a sleeping person before the group could respond. Post-mortem examination of the bear showed it was in poor physical condition, but researchers noted that poor condition is precisely the state that drives increased predatory risk in polar bears. A hungry polar bear is a more dangerous polar bear, not a less dangerous one. The climate dimension adds a layer to this risk that is still being fully understood. As sea ice coverage in the Arctic declines with changing climate conditions, polar bears spend more time on land and in proximity to human settlements. The sea ice is where they hunt seals most efficiently. Without adequate ice, they cannot access their primary food source. Animals that are nutritionally stressed, that have spent more time on shore, and that are more frequently moving through areas of human habitation represent an increasing interface between a hyper-carnivorous predator and human populations. Research teams tracking polar bear movement patterns in relation to sea ice loss have documented bears ranging further inland, spending more days per year in coastal and near settlement areas, and showing increased interest in human food sources, structures, and in some documented cases, people themselves. The trajectory of this trend, more ice loss, meaning more land time, meaning more human contact, points toward a future where the management of polar bear-human conflict becomes more complex and more frequent, not less. Night encounters in the Arctic present a particular category of danger that deserves separate consideration. In the continuous darkness of Arctic winter, the sensory advantage the polar bear already holds is amplified enormously. The bear can navigate by smell in complete darkness. It can move silently across snow and ice in conditions where human visibility is essentially zero. The bear does not need to see you to find you. You absolutely need to see it before it reaches you. And in winter darkness at minus 40, your ability to maintain adequate watch is constrained by everything from fatigue to the simple physical difficulty of keeping eyes open in extreme cold. Arctic researchers and expedition teams operating in polar bear territory maintain watch schedules through the night, rotating personnel to ensure continuous alert coverage. This is not precautionary theater. It is a response to documented incidents where camps were approached or entered at night by bears that were not detected until they were within the camp perimeter. The encounter you do not see coming is the one that matters. And in the Arctic winter, in the domain of an animal that is hunted silently on sea ice for hundreds of thousands of years, not seeing it coming is not a failure of attention. It is the default condition. What makes all of this particularly difficult to communicate to people who have not experienced it is that polar bears do not look immediately terrifying in still photographs. They look white and large and somewhat majestic, and the scale does not translate through a lens. The context, the emptiness of the ice, the distance from help, the temperature, the silence, does not transmit through a screen. What transmits is a large white animal that most people's cultural programming has categorized somewhere between majestic and cute. The people who work in polar bear country have a different categorization. They have the categorization that comes from knowing, operationally and from experience, that the animal they are looking at across the ice is assessing them with the same cognitive machinery it uses to decide whether to hunt a seal. And the decision it reaches is not always in your favor. The Arctic does not announce its dangers. It does not give you warning signs that your cultural programming has taught you to recognize. It gives you silence and whiteness and cold, and somewhere out there in all of that, an